On this Wednesday installment of Locked On Texans, John and myself will be joined by ESPN's own Adam Schefter.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, Texas fans across the world in the city of Houston, the great state of Houston, I know, to this Wednesday's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm John, some sports guy Hickman, your Texans football analyst, and like every day here on the Locked On Texans, Cody Davis, Sports Illustrated's own credential media member for the Houston Texans, is also joining the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Very special show. We're going to talk about moving forward without C.J. Stroud, the likelihood of Case Keenum or Davis Mills playing this upcoming Sunday. We'll get to Jonathan Grenard, who has reached 10 sacks. The first time in his career, he's reached double-digit sacks, the first Texan to do so since J.J. Watt. But we're kicking off today's show with ESPN's own Adam Schefter. What an amazing day to have a special guest joining the Locked On Texans podcast, one of the greatest sports broadcasters in the business. The name, you guys know the name, you know the brand, but we're talking about kind of a lifestyle today. But welcome to the show, Mr. Adam Schefter of ESPN.
John, Cody, thank you for having me. Appreciate it. It's an honor to be with you guys.
It's an honor to have you. Adam, you've made a living, one of our favorites personally for the longest of times. I remember just waking up early mornings on school day, getting ready to go to school and just watching you, right? But you made a living on being one of the NFL leaders in breaking and important news. But that's for the NFL. I want to transition to diabetes and ask what important facts or breaking news our listeners in NFL fans should know, and more about your partnerships with Sanofi.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm pleased to be a Sanofi spokesperson for this movement.
Excuse me.
That's okay. I'm pleased to be a Sanofi spokesperson for this movement, and it's a movement that I believe is critically important. Type 1 diabetes can't be prevented, but it can be detected early, and there are blood tests that can detect type 1 diabetes before any noticeable symptoms arise, before insulin is required, and potentially before any serious complications occur. So they're launching a movement, and it's called the One Pledge movement, and you can go to the onepledge.com today to pledge to get your family screened for type 1 diabetes. Speak to your doctor as well. That's always important, but it's personal to me. My wife is type 1 diabetic, and so I've watched what it's like for her to live with this disease. And if there's somebody out there that can be spared of it, that it can be detected early, that's a huge thing, and that's why we want people to go to the onepledge.com.
Adam, what will your message be for people out there living with this disease? Because I myself, I have a wife and several other family members who are battling this disease. So can you just talk about what message can you share? And at the same time, how important it is to provide that foundational support that they need in order to keep on fighting this disease?
Well, I think that people don't know a lot about it. And frankly, I didn't know a lot about it until I married my wife. And then you learn and you learn more and more, and you learn on the fly. Like, there are all sorts of situations that we've been in that I've learned more and more about type 1 diabetes. I've lived through this with my wife. We know how important it is to detect type 1 diabetes before the diagnosis is given. That's why we've tested our daughter in advance. We've tested our son in advance, and we want people to test in advance. And we want people to talk to their doctors for more information about screening for type 1 diabetes. But it's a challenging disease that is very hard and takes its toll. Look, my wife is the one that has to live with it. So she is by far, going away, the one that is impacted most by it. But it impacts everyone in our family, and we've all got to live through our own versions of it. And I wish we could snap our fingers and cure it, but that's not happening today, not to my knowledge. And as long as it's going to be out there in society, if people can do something to be screened early and detect it in advance, that would be a wonderful thing.
I think being proactive and not reactive is very important
Yeah.
when you look at something like this. And so, before we even talk football, thank you for joining and allowing us opportunity for you to spread your platform, use your platform, use our platform to spread more information about that. Now, I do want to transition over to football a little bit before I talk about the Texans. I'm a very observant guy. I'm kind of keen with my 4 eyes here. Adam, you have on a Jacksonville Jaguar t-shirt right now.
Yeah, well, if the Texans want to send me something to wear around the house, I'll put it on too. Like, no problem. You know what happened? I went to Jacksonville a couple of years ago, and they're like, "Oh, here's a shirt, to wear, like, to work out in." And so that's what it is. Just basically a shirt that's sitting around the house that I happened to get when I was down there doing interviews for. I'm trying to think what it was. What I was down there for. I do some kind of story for ESPN, and I didn't have a shirt to work out in, so they gave me a T-shirt, and so put the T-shirt on here. And like I said, if you guys want to send me one, a Houston Texans one, Omar, the PR guy, hasn't sent me one. So if he wants to send me one, that'd be great.
I could definitely make that happen. Matter of fact, I'm going to see him later on today.
Yeah, you tell him. You tell Omar,
happen.
Okay, that I made some restaurant recommendations to him this past weekend in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And the least he could do is send me a Texans workout shirt, right? Like, to go work out.
That's it.
XL. Yeah, there we go.
I brought it up because we know that the Jacksonville Jaguars, number one in the AFC South division right now, a very competitive division. The Texans are in a place where many people in the national space didn't think that they'd be, and that's in a playoff race. And so what's your opinion about the Week 15 matchup versus the Tennessee Titans, who are coming off beating a 9-3 Miami team?
Right. I think that's a great time to get them. I mean, Tennessee's always going to play you tough, but I'd rather get them when they're feeling great about themselves rather than when they're not, like they went into Miami all angry with piss and vinegar and upset the Dolphins. So, the Texans are coming off a tough loss, a game they should have found a way to win that they didn't. A lot of injuries, missing a lot of key players. We'll see whether CJ Stroud can pass through protocol. Most players don't get through protocol in a week. Let's hope that he gets well soon, and he can for his own sake, the team's sake. We'll see what happens there. But, divisional matchups are always tough. Tennessee's always going to play you tough. They're such a feisty, strong, tough team. But again, this probably would be a better time to get them than the night that they went into Miami to upset the Dolphins.
Adam, you just mentioned CJ Stroud. We know that is possibly the biggest story here in the city of Houston, one of the biggest stories in the league. We know he's in concussion protocol. We heard Coach D'Amico Ryan say that after the game and then again on Monday. But what can you share? What intangibles, what process does a player need to do in order to be cleared and get back out there on the field?
Well, there's a series of steps. They have to meet with independent neurologists, team doctors. They have to be cleared by both before they can play again. And I think the numbers are something like 80% of the people in protocol don't wind up passing in a week. Now, I don't know the extent of his injury and how severe his concussion was or wasn't. To me, they're all severe. They're all serious in their own ways. None of them should ever be dismissed or taken lightly or diminished. But again, there are various degrees of them, and I don't know where his falls on that spectrum, and I don't know whether or not he's shown encouraging signs so far, but he's going to have a series of steps that he has to pass through before he can be eligible to play again, and nobody knows right now, including the Texans, whether or not he'll be able to make it through or not.
Adam, before I let you go, I do want to ask you one question. As of right now, the Houston Texans, to everybody's surprise, are in the playoff hunt. So can you just talk about how it's been just watching this team grow this season, especially the improvements and development that we've seen from Coach D'Amico Ryans?
Well, great question. Listen, all we have to do is go back 1 year, right? A year ago, and I don't mean this to be harsh, nobody cared or was interested in the Houston Texans. They were largely irrelevant. And a year later, they are very relevant, and they may make the playoffs this year. and people are interested in Houston Texans football again. They want to see CJ Stroud play. They want to see if this team can keep it going. D'Amico has brought a certain energy and spark to that franchise. They have completely rebounded and become relevant 1 year later. They've become relevant, and they look like they're going to be relevant and competitive and good for a long period of time because they picked the right quarterback in the draft last April. They landed the right head coach, and it looks like they're positioned for success for years to come.
Adam, before we close, I want to pivot right back to the diabetes discussion. What would be your final message to our listeners, to anybody that's impacted by type 1 diabetes?
Well, again, I think the big thing that I mentioned before, and I'll just say it again, John and Cody, is that it's important to join me and to go to the onepledge.com today to pledge to get your family screened for type 1 diabetes. Speak to your doctor, get advice from him. But if people can do that and they can be proactive, like you mentioned, rather than reactive, and get out in front of it, rather be behind it, then I think they're doing themselves and their families a huge favor and a huge service.
Thank you, Adam Schefter, for joining the Locked On Texans podcast. And I pray for your fantasy team. We talked about that before we started. So hopefully you're able to get a good backup quarterback to kind of come in and get you a couple of points to win it. Thank you for joining the show once again.
Guys, thank you. Thank you for having me. Happy holidays, and I appreciate you taking the time today.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, guys.
As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stays hot on FanDuel. We all need something to warm us up, and whether it's a hot toddy or just being a new customer with FanDuel to warm you up, you can stay hot with these deals and get $150 in bonus bet with any $5 money line bet. So you can stay warm by getting some extra cash in your pocket with any $5 money line bet. You can win $150 if your team wins. If you're thinking about starting and joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action right now. Got the NBA, you got college football playoffs, you got college basketball, the NFL. There's a lot of things going on right now in this sports season. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, including player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and continue the heat, the hot, through the warm, through the cold, through whatever the weather is for your franchise, whether it's playoffs or not. Continue it with Locked On, FanDuel, this NFL season. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. Welcome back in, Locked On Texan listeners and viewers. That was a great conversation with Adam Schefter. Grateful that he came by to had an opportunity to talk about the importance of getting screened early for type 1 diabetes. But I do want to take what he mentioned about CJ Stroud and move to this conversation, which is 80% of players who receive a concussion, who have to go through concussion protocol, 80% of those players do not return the following week. And for Houston, the presumed offensive rookie of the year, at one point MVP discussion, rookie quarterback, that is a huge blow 3 weeks in a row. Looking at No Tank Dale, Nico Collins, and now CJ Stroud, that leaves Houston to see who do they play at quarterback. Is it the Texans legend Davis Mills, the savior of this franchise, or is it the Houston legend in Houston sports, Case Keenum? What are your thoughts?
Well, I do want to mention this. Do not be surprised if CJ doesn't play on Sunday, because we actually saw this same situation take place about a month ago. Remember, Tank Dell went down with the concussion against the Atlanta Falcons, and he did not suit up against the New Orleans Saints. And I remember the day after he came back, we was talking to him in his locker room, and he said one of the things that he had to do was literally just sit in a room with no TV, no music, no nothing. And he talked about how lonely he was at that time. But without a shadow of a doubt, do not expect CJ Stroud to play on Sunday. And the question is, who should the Houston Texans start? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's definitely going to be Davis Mills. Because first and foremost, this is a young man who, during training camp, there was moments when he did look like the better quarterback. There was moments where he did go throughout an entire practice without throwing an interception. There was moments where he looked really good going through his reads and progression. However, that was all the way, let's say, since August, I want to say. But at the same time, I do go back to something that I've been harping on in terms of this progression that we've seen out of Davis Mills. Every time he has had an opportunity to sit and learn from afar, he come back as a better player. And look, I'm not expecting Davis Mills to go out and replicate the same success that he has been that we saw out of CJ Stroud. However, I do think Davis Mills is a quality backup quarterback to help the Houston Texans overcome the loss of CJ.
I was wondering if we were going to bring up training camp and training camp notes because right here, what I have the moments that I was out there, and it wasn't as much as you, Cody, or some of our other colleagues. But I've had those moments, and I'm looking at my notes where Case Keenum looked better than Davis Mills.
I mean, there were all three of them did take turns.
And I would say the times that Davis Mills looked better than CJ Stroud was just looking like a rookie. And Davis Mills looked like a player that was in the year for 3 years, in the NFL for 3 years. But Case Keenum is 11-11 in December. Davis Mills, of course, shorter career, 4-5. And I was going to ask you, which is why I'm glad you brought it up, does training camp matter now from August in December? Does it matter now in December? And I think you factor that in. And if we factor that in, I got to look at Case Keenum. Last time Davis Mills played the Tennessee Titans on an away game, 178 yards, 1 TD. That was to Brandon Cooks. But if I had to answer what the Houston Texans should do, I would say this week is going to tell it all.
Yeah,
Davis Mills is the quarterback that on a few occasions relieved CJ Stroud this season. Actively has thrown an NFL pass this NFL regular season. Case Keenum is the man with all of the background, the history, the veterans, leadership, the career that he's had. He's been successful in the NFL. He's been successful for the Houston Texans. Again, 11 wins, 11 losses in December. I think this week of practice is going to be very important. I'm not going to put a starter out there. I'm not, because, guys, I'm not lying to you. Cody will attest. There were times where Case Keenum looked like the starter for the offense. Now, of course,
yeah, he did.
That wasn't a lot, but when you look at the technically third-string quarterback Case Keenum outplaying, especially them last 2 weeks of training camp. Those last 2 weeks of training camp, Case Keenum looked better than Davis Mills. Davis Mills did not look like a quarterback that would be the definitive number 2. And so I take that into consideration. And Case Keenum was getting it done with guys that are on the practice squad and no longer with the team.
We'll see with our quarterback position, Case and Davis. We'll see where we end up throughout the week. Both guys have played a lot of football, and at this point of where we are, we just one guy's going to put ourselves in position, right, to win football games, right? Who can we count on to help us win football games, and that's how we'll decide.
That was D'Amico Ryans talking about both Davis Mills and Case Keenum. Regardless of who's at quarterback, and I do think this matters, this is a Tennessee team coming off an emotional win, a high win. You saw some great from DeAndre Hopkins. And, was bad blood that bad where you couldn't sign him in the offseason? You saw, a couple of TDs from the GOAT, one of the GOATs of that franchise, Derrick Henry, and I think they're going to look to play spoilers this upcoming week. But I think it matters who's at quarterback. I think it matters at some point, how will Bobby Sloak, man, how is he going to help out his quarterbacks?
That's a good
So
point.
it doesn't matter who's behind center. They're going to need some help from the sidelines.
And I also want to mention this as well. We sit here talking about who's going to take the snap under center. I also want to mention this. What wide receivers are going to be out there? What I do want to mention this. Which wide receivers are going to be out there available on Sunday? Because you're already without Tank Dell. As of right now, at the time of this recording, we do not know the status of Nico Collins. A lot of people was talking about how bad Noah Brown looked against the New York Jets. However, you do got to keep in mind that he's been battling a knee injury. And at the same time, when you take a look at the tight end core, Will Dalton Schultz be back with what?
Right.
his hamstring injury. So it's like, okay,
it's tough.
I'm fine with whoever they start under center, but they got to make sure that they have the weapons.
I wonder if Houston's going to look to call up any wide receivers from their practice squad. Jared Wayne is sitting right there. You know, that's a friend of the show. But moving on to Jonathan Grenard. Before we do that, I got something for you guys. And what I got for you is Prize Picks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports is just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections. Sit back and watch the winnings roll in. This basketball season is even hype now with Prize Picks. It's even better because now you can do combo projections across football and basketball from specials leagues. A league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more player stat projections from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James, Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3 points made and receptions. You can also play alongside rapper Meek Mill and Andrew Schultz in the community plays under the promo tab. Make sure that you check it out. They also got the insurance policy. Prospects got it all. And I want to shout out to the Prize Picks Princess Parlays out there. All the Princess Parlays out there. You guys are making this even much more fun when you look at daily fantasy sports. Go to prospects.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a positive match, first-time deposit match up to $100.
It's pretty cool. I mean, that's a goal I have for myself is obviously just to get to that double digits when I got to the league. Blessed, man. It's exciting, but I know we got 4 more games to go. Obviously, we didn't get the dub. But yeah, I mean, I definitely, as far as just milestones that I definitely wanted to hit for myself in my career mentally, it was good.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Wednesday installment of Locked On Texans. The 2023 season has been a year of milestones for several players. The long catch that Nico Collins had put him at 1,000 receiving yards for the season. Had an opportunity to speak to him, wide receiving coach Ben McDaniels, about Nico Collins' growth ever since their time together at Michigan. Please be sure to go check out that article over at Sports Illustrated's own Texans Daily. However, another guy that John and myself has been high on ever since he was drafted, John Grenard. For the very first time in his career, this young man has reached double-digit sacks.
Amazing.
John and myself always believed that he had the potential to do it. The only thing he had to do was stay healthy, and here we are for the first time. And as a matter of fact, John, I know you said it early on in the show, but the first guy to reach double-digit sacks since J.J. Watt in 2018 is a big accomplishment for Grenard. Shout out to that young man, Grenard. Keep doing your thing. We cannot wait to see what the future has in store for you.
Yeah, you know what's cool about John Grenard? He's a 3rd-round pick. Nico's a 3rd-round pick. And the question surrounding both of those players has been, yeah, they can produce, but the question mark surrounding their health has always been there, rightfully so. And outside of Sunday's matchup, Nico Collins has been healthy enough to play in enough games to get 1,000 yards. And then you also look at his quarterback play just being better as well. But he's been productive for the Houston Texans with the health questions up until Sunday. John Grenard has been healthy for Houston. I don't know if he's missed any games this year. Right now, he's played in 13 games. Yeah, he played in 13 games, which matches his career high. 13 in 2021, where at the time he recorded 8 sacks. That was a career high at the time. 13 in 2020, only 1 sack, but he was a rookie that year. So 2021, 13 games, still missed games, 8 games last year. But now you're looking at a player 13 games in. And this is truly a career year. More tackles on the year with 46. More solo tackles on the year right now with 34. 10 sacks, of course. That's the big number. But he's been better in terms of tackles for loss. He's been much more of an impact player, impacting the run and the pass. And so I'm looking at John Grenard as a player. I know it's early, but I'm looking at him as a player that hopefully he can take a hometown discount. But I would love to see him return back here to the city of Houston, playing under DeMeco Ryans. I want to take some time out to shout out my man Alvin I met over the weekend. stop me in the store at a CVS and just let me know how much he enjoys the show. And so to everybody that listens and watches the show, man, thank y'all so much. We really appreciate it. Wouldn't be able to do this without y'all. Shout out to my man Alvin. And there was a teacher from Eisenhower 9. Didn't get his name, but shout out to him as well. For the rest of the week, we'll continue to discuss how the Texans can rebound from this injury bug that continues to find them like moth to a flame. And then tomorrow, crossover, tic-tac-toe the Titans. Oh, this is going to be fun.
Man, look, I understand the Texans have a lot going up against them, but they have to make sure they win this game. Because
and I'll be talking about DeMeco Ryans' defense.
The Tennessee Titans, they wearing the Houston Oilers colors, correct?
Oh, man.
Coming off a game where DeAndre Hopkins looked like Houston D-Hop, and I think he's like 110, 109 yards away from another season of reaching 1K.
And they couldn't get it done here in Houston. They want to give. Never mind.
Hey, if there's one game I need the Texans to win, it's this one. Oh, yeah. Because them Oilers colors, that belong down here in the city of Houston, baby.
Oh, yeah. Thank y'all for listening to the Locked On Texans podcast. Subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Give me a follow on X, formerly known as Twitter, at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.